An image we will never forget as today marks 44 years since Mount St. Helens erupted. 57 people were killed. It triggered the largest landslide in recorded history. The eruption also caused ash to pour into the atmosphere for several hours. And you have to imagine what our region went through when this all happened and how geologists and meteorologists and natural disaster experts, how they all reacted. Well, I have one of them with me this morning, joining us here on Good Day Seattle, Ted Beener, a meteorologist who was working on that very day, at that very time that Mount St. Helens erupted. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Glad to be here.
You have such an incredible story. You were working at the National Weather Service Center in Seattle right at that time when the eruption began. So talk to us a little bit about how the day started for you, and then how it just transpired when the red phone rang.
Yeah, the infamous red phone.
Yeah.
Now, at that time, the Seattle Forecast Office was literally across the street in the Lake Union building on the 7th floor. So I would look out the window and see this building, which at that time was Vernell's Candy Factory. That Sunday morning, mild sunny morning, lots of people were walking their dogs, getting their morning coffee, things like that. Just a nice, quiet Sunday morning. And then shortly after 8:30 that morning, the red phone that's sitting on the corner of the aviation forecast desk where I was, and back then we were a state forecast office, not just where we are today. That phone, which never rang.
You don't want it to ring.
Right, rang. It's a hotline between us and the FAA flight service station at Boeing Field. So I picked up the phone and Seattle weather. And at that point, the specialist there said, I have a pilot on the radio, and I'm going to patch you through. He needs help. Okay, and suddenly I was connected with that pilot. Now, he was the pilot of a sightseeing flight out of Chehalis. He had 5 passengers on board. Fortunately, when the mountain blew, they were on the south side of the mountain. So the aircraft flying, it got thrust sideways like this, vertically, and he spun off towards Portland and regained control. Then he radioed the flight service station, and that's when he connected it to me.
Yeah.
All he wanted to do was find a way to get back to his base at Chehalis. How can I do it? He wanted to know where the plume was going. He described his plane got hit by rocks. It felt like a monstrous pizza oven.
Oh
I mean, all this heat came out. He had 5 passengers on board, and I could hear in the background what I would describe as R-rated language.
Sure,
okay.
I can imagine.
And at that point, we have been working with a lot of agencies since the volcano started to have what I call tummy rumblings, upset tummy starting in March. And so we had a lot of plans already laid out. One of them was a plume trajectory forecast, which we did twice a day. And to answer that pilot's question, it was all heading to the east-northeast. All he had to do was spin around, go over to Kelso-Longview, and head straight up I-5 to get back to Chehalis. All was well. Hung up the phone. My lead forecaster to my left looked at me, and he had this knowing look like, it went, didn't it? And I said, yes, it did. So
because that was your first encounter of knowing that it had erupted.
Absolutely. It was just minutes after 8:30, so it had just happened at that point. Our role at this point was to put out a flash flood warning for the Toutle River, which Paul did, and my job as the aviation forecaster, first thing to do was call the Air Route Traffic Control Center in Auburn and say, Houston, we have a problem, the mountain is gone. They started shutting down all the airspace because that ash is horrible for engines of any kind, including jet engines. And then I updated all the air terminal forecasts in eastern Washington, and at that point, there was no international code for volcanic ash that you would put in the forecast. So I looked at Paul, I said, here are my choices. And the one we came up with was dust. So I updated that, updated all the air route forecasts, all of that in just 1 hour just went by so fast.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. You talk about, how the tummy had been rumbling. There were plans in place. I'm sure your tummy started to rumble when that red phone rang. What was that experience in regards to the expectation or the unknown of also what had just happened. You were preparing, but do you feel like you were prepared for how big the blow really was?
More or less, yes, because we already had everything written up with regards to the flash flood warning for the Toutle River. The mountain had been bulging, particularly towards the north side, so it was pretty well known at some point that champagne cork was going to pop, and off she would go, and you would have this big slide into the lake there, and you would have all this water running downstream. So there was a lot of knowns in that regard. Nobody knew that the ash plume was going to climb to 80,000 feet.
Right.
And you would have ash that would go all the way around the globe. And in eastern Washington, some places got as much as 5 inches of ash piled up. Some of which, if you dig around over there, you can still find it today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
And we talk about it being 44 years ago, which for some people it seems like forever ago. For you, it probably feels like it was just yesterday when you got that phone call.
Oh, it was a very memorable event. You know, we all have big moments in our careers at some point. This was my first one, and again, it feels like it just happened yesterday.
Yeah, incredible story you have. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. Of course, we'll have all of this up on our website, fox13seattle.com. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to take a quick break and be right back.